Welcome to week one, phase one of team training. We're going to be going through some priorities I want you guys to keep in mind this week, and also kind of the general direction that team training is going to be going over the remainder of this 6 week phase. I'd like you guys to try your best not to just keep these priorities in mind this week, but throughout the remainder of the phase. Specifically for those of you guys who are maybe a little bit older, maybe you're coming off of a long layoff where you haven't trained consistently or you had to take some time off due to an injury, something like that. We really want to take our time to do all the little things correctly. That way we can build a lot of momentum and not go too hot out of the gate right away and run into pain, aggravate an injury, or just pick a pace of training, whether it's intensity-wise or volume-wise, that's not sustainable for the next 6 weeks. And so I really want you guys to have kind of a sub-maximal intensity mentality going into the first couple of weeks of this phase, and staying healthy, feeling good is really what I want you guys to be focused on. Specifically when it comes to lifting heavy weights, when we're talking about body weight exercises or conditioning, there's a little bit more wiggle room there and we can go a little bit harder. But when we're squatting, benching, and deadlifting, we really want to not lift close to failure until we get into the final week or two where we're going to be pushing it a little bit harder. And one of the main tools we'll be using to help you stay in that sweet spot where the weights are heavy enough to challenge you, but not so heavy that you're going to run into some type of problem, is going to be the repetitions in reserve scale. The repetitions in reserve, or RIR scale, is something that takes time to learn, and it is a bit of a skill that you have to acquire over time, but it's really a simple concept. We essentially want you to get done with a set and feel like you still could have done a certain amount of reps that will be predetermined by the programming. So for example, you may have a set of 5 with deadlifts and it will say 5 reps at RIR 3, which means you're going to do 5 reps at a weight that is challenging, but when you get done with the set, you should feel like I could have done 2 or 3 more reps confidently. And so if that same set of 5 was at an RIR 1, that would mean when you were done with the set, I want you to feel like you could have only done 1 more rep. And so the majority of the work we're going to be doing is somewhere between 3 and 1 repetitions in reserve. For some of the smaller exercises, you will see a higher repetitions in reserve rating, but for now, we're kind of just talking about squat, bench, and deadlift. So let's say it's your first week and you say, okay, the last time I deadlifted, I used 135 pounds, but it's been a while, so I'll use 100 pounds. And you do a set of 5, but you get done with the set and say, man, that was really hard. I don't think I could have done any more reps. Best case scenario, I could have done 1 more. That means that we would rate that set an RIR 1 or an RIR 0, depending on how you felt. And that means the set was way more intense than we wanted it to be. So that means you're going to take a lot of weight off the bar so that we can get back into that appropriate intensity level. And that may require you to take 20 pounds off the bar. It may require you to take 50 pounds off the bar. But it doesn't really matter. We want you to lift as light as you need to lift in order to feel like you're in that intensity range that the RIR is indicating for you. And like I said, this does take some time to get comfortable with. So if you're still not sure exactly how much weight to use and you're trying to guess the RIR, but you're not really comfortable with it yet, just stay on the safe side, lift nice and light. We can always add more weight, and I'd always rather have you lift too light because we can add weight later rather than lift too heavy and risk running into a problem. And I did want to point out that the platform that I use for team training does not have a repetitions in reserve setting. And so when you see 5 by 3 at 3, that's 5 sets of 3 reps at 3 repetitions in reserve. So that at 3 or at 1, whatever it is at the end of the sets and reps, is the repetitions in reserve rating. So the repetitions in reserve scale and making sure that you adhere to the RIR rating at the end of each exercise is going to be one of the most important things when it comes to making training sustainable, making sure you stay pain and injury free, and building that momentum like we talked about and getting the best results possible. Now that you have a good idea of what the repetitions in reserve scale is and how to utilize it, I want to move on to the movements themselves. For all your strength work for this phase, you're going to be doing pauses, long 2-second pauses, on the squat, bench, and deadlift. And I want to break down a basic movement checklist, and I want to start with the squat because that has the highest mobility demand, and that tends to be the one that people struggle with the most when it comes to getting into a good position. There's two main concepts that I want you to make sure you're adhering to as you squat. The first one is that your feet are going to be in a balanced, even position on the floor so that the two balls in the front of your feet and the heel of your foot are in even contact with the ground, and you're not getting leaned forward onto your toes and having your heels come up off the ground. And the second one is just going to ensure that we're using a full range of motion by making sure that your hips are getting parallel or ideally below your knees. And so when you squat down, your leg and your torso kind of make a hip crease, and I want that hip crease to be at parallel with or below your kneecap. That way we're making sure we're going through a full range of motion. The one thing I want you to keep an eye out for with the deadlift is making sure that you pause the repetition as soon as the weight breaks off the ground. We really want you to spend time in the most mechanically disadvantageous position on all of these lifts, and that's the purpose of the pause work. So with the squat, you're pausing in the bottom at the deepest part of the squat. With the deadlift, you're pausing as soon as you break that weight off the ground. And with the bench press, you'll be pausing on the chest before you initiate the press. And you want to make sure that you're doing a long 2-second pause like is instructed on the program, and you're not rushing through the pauses or forgetting to do them all together. For some of you guys, that's going to require you to take weight off and use less than you anticipated, but that's okay. We want to prioritize the quality of the pause and the range of motion over the weight on the bar. For one of your conditioning movements during the week, you're going to be doing sit-outs, and these are going to be every minute on the minute. And if you haven't done these before, it's pretty simple. You set a timer. The first week is going to be for 4 minutes. And as soon as the timer starts, you're going to go and perform however many reps you're going to end up doing. The thing you want to keep in mind is that because it's every minute on the minute, when you stop doing repetitions, let's say you do 10 and that takes you 15 seconds, you now have 45 seconds until the next minute starts to rest. And so you want to pick a number of reps that's challenging, but allow yourself at least 45 to 30 seconds for most of you so that you can recover enough to do a similar amount of reps when the next minute comes. And you also want to keep in mind that we're going to be adding a set each week to this workout, and so it's going to get progressively harder. Like I talked about before, we have a little bit more wiggle room on these movements when it comes to how much stress and fatigue they generate. So if you end up doing 20 reps on the first set and you find out that that's way too hard, you can lower it down to 10 or 15 reps, whatever it needs to be. And if you're weaker and you're not in very good shape, you may need to do 3 reps or 5 reps each set, and that's totally fine as well. Find the pace and the amount of reps that challenges you but is sustainable and that you can build on for the remainder of the phase. And there's 2 more concepts I want to talk to you about before we end the video. The first one is that you're going to be picking your own weights, and the second one is just the general progression for the rest of the phase. When you go on the actual program itself, there's not going to be a specific amount of weight that it tells you to use. Because if I say use 100 pounds for everybody, for some of you guys, it's going to be way too easy and you're not going to make progress. For some of you guys, that might be way too heavy and you could hurt yourself trying to lift that. So like we talked about before, you're going to use that repetitions and reserve scale to guide you on what weight you should use. So for week 1, you have 5 sets of 5. So you're going to warm up, which I talk about in the Keys to Success document, which I will link in the program. And then you're going to work up to your first set of 5, and that's going to be at an RIR 3. And so you want to find a weight that's challenging, but that allows you to complete all 5 sets of 5 while staying in that 3 repetitions in reserve range. And you can adjust based on if it's too hard, if it's too easy. And ideally by week 2 or week 3 at the latest, you're going to have a good idea of where the sweet spot is and what weights are challenging, but what is not overdoing it. And we're going to continue to add weight each week of the phase as the volume goes down, and we're going to work you up to a new 1 rep max. And that's how it's going to work. At the end of each 6-week phase, we'll work you up to some type of PR. It won't always be a 1 rep max. A lot of times it'll be a volume PR of some kind, but you're going to get to the 6-week phase and know for sure whether or not you got better. In next week's video, we're going to be going into more detail about the long-term programming strategy that we're going to be going through over the next couple of months, but that's the end of the video for now. If you have not signed up already for team training, check the link in the description. It'll allow you to sign up for the first 7 days for free. After that, it's just $25 a month. If you guys have questions or concerns about the programming, please feel free to leave a comment below. Shoot me a message on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.